This week on the OneCast, we're joined by EQ angler Harvey Horn, former Elite Series pro. He wants to talk about choosing the right rod for the right technique, as well as those sponsorships that pop up at unexpected times.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. Huh? It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
What's going on, OneCast fans? Welcome back to the OneCast for another weekly episode something, 20-something.
I don't know. I lost count.
As always, Pete, Ben, and Trey here. Ben is joining us remotely, still on his tour through Missouri, fishing bull shoals and stuff. This week, we're joined by Harvey Horn. We're going to bring him on in a second. But as always, we want to make sure you support those who support us. So head to OneCast Fishing. .com. Check out snagless jigs, long neck hooks, weedless neds, and anything else that's over there. Maybe some new stuff coming here before too long. We'll have to see. You have to keep an eye on it. Use the code TheOneCast, all one word, to save 10% off your order. Help us continue to do more for the show and bring you better content and things like that. So Ben is struggling a little bit there in Missouri. It sounds like the fishing's not the greatest right now. They're in that weird post-spawn transition.
Yeah, I mean, I love bull shoals. I love fishing it, but usually I fish it either earlier in the spring or later June, July, August when they're really offshore. And it's also been weird weather here. There's been no rain for 2 weeks, but the lake's still pretty stained. We've had no wind. Like the last 2 weeks, if you go on the Weather Channel app, it's light and variable every single day and mostly bluebird skies. So they're in that weird transition funk. I've caught a couple spots in largemouth out deep. I can see them in the clearer water. They're still in the bushes, but it's one of those things. Sometimes you're just not very good.
High pressure system can make it tough. Before we bring Harvey on, there was some news that dropped about an hour ago. We're going to bring that up when Harvey gets on. Kind of a big news because it's the second time a situation like this has happened in a national level event in the last really month. So interesting there. We'll get his take on it as somebody that's fished all over the country. The only other thing I wanted to bring up is NPFL. Down at Santee, Patrick Walters. There was only about 2 anglers that were consistent, and they finished 1-2. The rest of the field had one good day, one bad day, maybe one really good day, or 2 bad days and one really good day. It was tough. But Patrick Walters won that one, so congrats to him on hoisting the shield. Trey went down there for it. We'll talk about that on the live probably more, so we don't take up too much of Harvey's time. But was a great event. And if you don't tune into our Fishing Fridays, make sure you do so you can get the inside on that, because we're going to talk all about it. But I guess, Trey, just real quick, you could say, if there's one near you, go check it out, right?
Man, I'll tell you, dude, the MPFL, they run an amazing event. They are very streamlined, limited amount of staff that puts on a fantastic show. Get to meet the ownership and converse with them face to face. Great anglers that come across the stage, and they really have built a great culture for the anglers and for the fans. And so being a part of that, taking the OneCast down there and representing was a fantastic opportunity, and getting to meet Paul and Brad was amazing. So congratulations to Patrick Walters. He's a stand-up guy, and congratulations to all the other anglers that persevered through the extreme weather that the MPFL had, which they made a really good professional decision by pushing Showdown Saturday to Sunday, and it worked out. And so it was great to be a part of that. So yeah, if you're in the area, the MPFL comes around, go check them out. Really great environment, great culture.
Yep.
Hey, Trey, did you get a hold or pick up that shield?
Man, I was, about 6 centimeters away. Centimeters? What am I doing here? 6 inches away. I'm thinking outside. I was inches away from that shield. Got to take a look at the plaque that they presented. I think they presented a plaque to the county itself for hosting the event, or for the municipality. Got to stand next to the shield, got to see the $100,000 check. I was close. I couldn't fit it under my shirt, so there was no way I could take it. But it was really cool. And we got to go in the back of the trailer and throw the OneCast sticker up there and sign the wall. So that was really cool, man. But yeah, they got some pretty cool things on the horizon. Won't let the cat out of the bag because it's not my place, but man, really cool deal, and got to see a lot of elite anglers fishing the NPFL, and they say the same thing about their format is very professional, very family oriented, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that for sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Like I said, I don't want to take up too much of Harvey's time, but we'll definitely be speaking about it because there's a lot more that went on there, and probably some stuff on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Trey's made a few posts, so make sure you're following along on the OneCast on Instagram, OneCast Fishing. Also post stuff in our personals, whatever you follow us on is great. So we'll make sure we get that out to you. But without any more delay, I'm gonna bring in Harvey Horn. Harvey, what's going on, bud?
How y'all doing, guys?
Good. How are you, man?
Not too bad for a Tuesday. It is Tuesday, ain't it?
Is it? No, it's Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
Holiday weekend got everybody. I keep thinking, man, I got 3 more days, and I remember tomorrow's Thursday, so I'm ready to head out to do a little fishing this week.
I'm actually gonna go fish a tournament on Saturday. We've got a local veterans tournament that's coming up on Beaver Lake Saturday, so be a special opportunity for me to go take a vet out and might even catch a bass.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Who's putting that tournament on, Harvey?
That is the man. I'm gonna have to. You're gonna make me look.
You gotta look.
It's one of the local churches.
Okay.
That has put it on for the last couple of years, and it's always been that I've been out of town. Cross Church in Rogers is the one that's putting it on.
Okay.
But huge deal for Cross Church to put this on for our local veterans, and it's a special opportunity for me to be able to go do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we ran through the NPFL real quick in our introduction, but you brought some news to our attention, which we wouldn't have seen because we weren't checking our phones. And you had an opportunity to talk with Baron Adams, who had a similar situation in the same state. So Josh Stratner, it's Josh, right? Yeah, Straisner. I'm not great with some of the names in the elites, but
it's Smith.
he was ruled ineligible by Bass today for some sort of license issue. We don't know what it was, but
we don't know particularly what happened, but we do know that after talking to the tournament directors for Bass, which I'm sure was Lisa and they've been able to deem that he is ineligible. Now, this is not a disqualification. It's just is what it is. For whatever reason, they found him to be ineligible because of a licensing issue. And Josh is not going to be able to fish the Bassmaster Elite Series that's being held on the Sabine River in Orange, Texas.
I got a question, Harvey. What would be the implication or the difference between a DQ and an ineligible? Is it a points thing, or?
I'm not real sure. I couldn't really get into it because there's similarities. There's also a lot of differences just in the wording of how they do things, and without being able to read it off, I couldn't get into it.
That's fair. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you knew or not, because I think that's a big. There's obviously a difference with them using the 2 different terms.
Yeah, well, I mean, you go back and look at what has happened to other anglers this year, and they did get disqualified in the Elite Series. But this is not a disqualification. This is just a ruled ineligible. Now, whether or not there is whether there's anything that goes along with that ineligibility rule or a disqualification, I'm not real sure. There are certain penalties that come with rules violations with bass, all the way up to, you can be fined or you can lose your BASS membership for life. I don't know of anybody that's ever gotten that judgment ruled against them, but there's some people that have came pretty close, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I imagine pretty severe violations or multiple violations of the same rule or things like that would lead to that lifetime ban. But I can't imagine that would be something they would want to throw out without absolute necessity.
The biggest thing with bass, and this is one of their like rule 2 or something, is you cannot argue with or badmouth bass, so to speak, because they will literally, there will be consequences. And so far, there's been some people skating pretty thin ice, but so far we haven't heard them do anything severe. So we'll just have to kind of wait and see how that all plays out over the next couple weeks.
When you look at the 2022 season versus what's already happened in 2023 on the bass fishing side, we all know what happened on the other side of different fishing and stuff. But do you feel like there's been more that's happened so far in 2023 versus 2022?
Well, I mean, we've had more things happen, but it's been stuff that could have been avoided. I'll put it that way. With the disqualification in the NPFL, with this ruling, with other things that have happened in the Elite Series and the Opens, all that could have been avoided really easily. And it's I'm not going to say that they're cracking down, but you have guys who are more cognizant of what the rules are now, and they are actually reporting this themselves.
Yeah.
So, with the situation that Barron had in Texas, that was a simple mistake. Anybody could have made it. I know when we went to Mississippi a couple of years ago for an Open, a buddy of mine ended up buying a magazine subscription thinking he was buying a Mississippi fishing license. So anything can happen when you're dealing with electronics and trying to buy a fishing license on a phone.
Well, I wonder what subscription he bought.
They probably have like the Mississippi Times outdoor magazine or something.
Mississippi Outdoor Life or something, that looked a lot like the Mississippi page for buying a fishing license. And he never thought twice about it, filled out all of his info and literally hit pay, paid for it. The next thing you know, he looks at his email and he was like, well, what the heck? I'm like, what? I bought a magazine subscription. How did you do that? But I had actually seen that link myself. So that link is right above the actual link you need to click on to buy.
I wonder if he canceled the.
Hold on 1 second.
He did.
I wonder
he
if
did eventually. I think.
I was going to say
two magazines.
That's it's a monthly reminder.
Yeah, you get to remember once a month on that. But I think to piggyback on what Harvey was saying, it looks like he froze a little bit there, so we'll give him a second.
There we go.
When he was talking about, people understand the rules better and more of the self-reporting, which has always been part of bass fishing. I also feel like anglers, consumers, the outside world are more hyper-focused on these things than they may have been in the past, just because of what happened in the walleye world and the mainstream coverage that got, and it being everywhere. So now when something pops up and you see DQ or ineligible or fine or this or that, everybody's ears kind of perk up and you pay a lot more attention to what's going on there, just because it brought tournament fishing as a whole into a higher realm of visibility, which, they say no publicity is bad publicity. And I believe, I know I talked to folks that had no idea that tournament fishing was a thing until this happened.
Yeah.
They were like, I didn't even know you could make money doing like fishing against other people. And I'm like, yeah, it's just like gambling on a horse race, basically, except you're betting on yourself.
Yeah.
And so it did bring some focus to folks that didn't know. And now there's, I know that I have people that listen to us every week that don't know what we're talking about, but they find it interesting that that's a thing because they didn't understand it. You have folks that like to learn about stuff that's going on. So it was cool there, but like I was saying, I think it just brought a lot of hyper focus to any time something happens right now. It's the industry as a whole is kind of sensitive to what's going on. And then they're looking for the reaction. Like everybody's looking for how, we've talked about the incident with Keith and how, how that happened. And then we have the incident with the NPFL and now we have this. So everybody's going to kind of focus on those things and they want to see how organizations, how anglers and how the consumer reacts to that and move forward from there. So it's an interesting time to kind of be in the sport, around the sport, the industry, fan, fiction, whatever it is.
I know that we're going to talk about like, rod and reel and sponsorship deals and stuff, but I do have a question for you, Harvey. As it pertains, you've been in the industry for a long time, and you've been at all the levels of professional bass fishing. Do you think the amount of visibility that because of social media and the great internets that we have and all this stuff, because it's so quick to find out information, do you believe that it's actually helping the integrity of the sport?
I do. I really believe that it does. For the simple fact that, especially for guys that run live in their boats during the tournament, there's not a lot of them that do that. And I've toyed around with it a couple times, but I never had a place that I had really good signal. So, you literally are being watched by the entire fishing community anytime that you have live running, or you have Bassmasters cameras, or you have the NPFL cameras, MLF cameras. It brings a whole new dynamic knowing that at any given time, somebody could be recording you. And I know I've been in a position now 4 times where I have had to call the tournament director, and I literally can take you back to the spot that they all 4 happened. My first day on the Elite Series in 2019, had a marshal, was running down the lake, and my marshal notices my rod lockers open. And in our rules, it states both anglers have to, or both angler and marshal have to be seated anytime the big motor is running and in gear. So I'm slowing down to take the boat out of gear and cut the motor off. Dude jumps up before I come fully off plane, closes the rod locker and sets back down. And I'm like, I got to call a trip. He's like, why? So you got up before I could turn the motor off. Well, you shouldn't have to do that. I'm like, I know I shouldn't, but if there's another angler that's sitting over on the bank and he sees what just went down, and he makes that phone call that he's supposed to make, then I'll get DQ'd for the day. And he couldn't understand that I was going to, waste Tripp's time making that phone call, but I violated the rule because of something he did. Wasn't my fault that it happened, but it happened nonetheless. So now we have a dynamic of anybody on the water, anybody standing on the bank, they can be recording you at any time, as we saw with Keith Poche. And, that added dynamic of anytime you're out in public or on the water, you might have somebody recording you. And if you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing, it could wind up on social media.
When you're running a rat boat and everything too, I mean, it's not just that. I was talking to Hank Cherry a couple weeks ago he had swung up by the open there at Kerr. I don't remember where it was, but I was talking to him and we just got into the conversation randomly about like dock owners and how things like that go with some of them. And he told me about a time on Norman, when he had first made it to the elites, and it was when he was with Evan Williams. So he had his boat with the Evan Williams rat, and he was there fishing a team tournament. It wasn't even a BASS tournament. He was fishing a dock, and some guy came down and was, yelling at him, MFing him, telling him to get away from my dock, blah, blah. And Hank was, surprisingly, because I know Hank in the back of the day had a little bit of a temper, but I guess he stayed really calm and told the guy, like, you can call the law, whatever you want to do. Like, I can fish here, and I'm going to. And the guy actually went and called Evan Williams, and his partner was there, and he was like, yeah, like 15 minutes after that guy confronted us, Hank's phone rang, and it was Evan Williams. He had called him because the name was on the side of the boat. They called Evan Williams. Evan Williams got a hold of their manager for their anglers and called him and were like, hey, are you out here cussing this guy? And he was like, that's not at all what happened. So at the end of the day, he ended up calling the law, and they fined the guy for sportsman harassment or fisherman harassment because he was down there badgering the guy. So he ended up, getting himself in trouble. So karma bit him. But yeah, that was before everybody had a dang 4K GoPro camera in their pocket. And when you're a big billboard, and that's something I try to tell our anglers that I help band manage with OneCast Fishing, the ambassadors, other guys or gals that come to me and talk about pro staff or those things. And I'm like, you have to understand, like, a serious company, if you want to move up and you want to do things, you have to remember that you represent that company 24/7. So no matter what you do on social media or in the public, even if you're not wearing their gear, if you're associating your name with them and you do something stupid, it's going to come back on that company.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately it's going to come back on you and you're going to screw yourself up.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I learned really quickly when I was running an express boat. They actually received a call on somebody that was not me, and the guy that answers the phones, I'd gotten to be friends with him, and he called me directly, and he was like, "Hey, bro, where are you at?" And I'm like, "Bro, I'm sitting in my garage right now." He's like, "Well, we just received a call that somebody on Greer's Ferry was running circles around pontoon boats and this, that, and the other." And I'm like, "No, I'm at home, dude." And he's like, "Okay, I just wanted to call you before I went to your boss and clear this up before it went any further, because they called saying it was you." And I'm like, "Well, bro, it's kind of hard to mistake my boat for anybody other than Dale Hightower, Bill Lowen, or Caleb Summerall at that time."
Yep.
But because our boats were wrapped and had the big Express on it, well, all they saw was Express boats, so they automatically, because of social media, thought it was me. But things like that happen all the time. It's just how everybody handles it. I had that same situation go down years ago fishing Caney Lake back home in Louisiana, where one of the docks that me and my best friend fished every Thursday night for 4 years. I came and fished a tournament with another friend of mine on a Saturday. Well, we come around to start fishing this dock, and my buddy skips a worm up under the dock, and the dude comes down and loses it. And I'm like, "Dude, we literally fish here almost every Thursday night. We've talked to you numerous times, and you've never had a problem with anybody fishing here. Well, you guys in these big bass boats," and all it was I was in a different boat. One of the NASCAR edition Rangers, when they came out.
Oh yeah.
I was in a different boat, so it immediately pissed him off that I was there fishing in this big nice boat, where on Thursday nights I was there in a smaller, older boat, and he didn't have any problems with us fishing on Thursday night. But when we come out there in a different boat on Saturday, it was a big deal. You can't be fishing around my dock. But
and I've only once seen the positive side of a dock angler, and it was actually a couple weeks ago. I fished a tournament with Mike Nadeau on Tillery, and we went back in a pocket where he had seen some beds, and the sun wasn't quite right. We ended up catching one of the fish he knew was there because he knew where the bed was, and we were able to blind flip to it. We found another one and flipped, and the owner came down, and I'm like, "Great, here we go." And we both kind of looked at each other, and the guy's like, "Y'all in a tournament?" We were like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, there's a bed right there on this corner, and there's one over there." He's like, "My daughter names them, so I have to let her know if you catch them." And he pointed all these beds that were around out to us. So
there's Steven and Billy. And
so it was kind of cool because when he come down, I was like, we're about to get told."
But that's important to bring up. You don't hear that talked about a lot. And I don't know if you've talked about it previously, but with everything going on right now, especially with how social media just amplifies everything, with the Keith Poche deal, with the, I don't know, you name it. And everyone, even myself, I'm like, man, like, it's great entertainment. Like Keith Poche is great entertainment, or whoever, insert the name here. But other people, and myself included, didn't really think about how much visibility you get with a wrapped boat, with being on, bodies of water and conducting yourself in a manner that's not going to bring, tarnish the reputation of whatever organization you're working for, your sponsors, all that stuff. So you're constantly in the limelight. It's like the red carpet is the lake, and you're always on it.
So me and my son fished a tournament on Table Rock Sunday before last, and literally within a few hours of getting home, one of the Facebook pages, there was somebody made a post, "Hey, who was this guy on Table Rock running a Black Rifle boat?" And at that time, I was locked out of Facebook, so I couldn't answer him myself. It happens, you know.
Yeah.
Tried to
Facebook
type in
jail.
my password the wrong way 3 different times. I got locked out of my own social media. So my sister reached out to him and said, "Hey, you know, that's my brother. You know, you got any questions or what's going on?" He's like, "No." He was super nice. He gave us plenty of room. It was just kind of foggy, and I was concerned about y'all running. But I noticed y'all did wait until the fog started to lift before you took off, and I just wanted to say that he was very courteous to us as we were putting our boat in and getting out. So not always is it negative, but the positive is a whole lot less than the negative is.
Yeah.
And the positive, it's kind of, that's just society we live in, not to get off, but like when you do things the right way, nobody talks about it. When you wait in line at the ramp, when you shut your lights off, when you back down in the morning, you do all that, nobody says anything. But the second that guy pulls in and doesn't shut his lights off or is unstrapping his boat, everybody's freaking out. And it's, you know, that's the guy we probably should say, hey, you know, shut your lights off is good for the people, and maybe, you know, maybe do thank the guy that does actually shut them off and doesn't blind you. But
that's how we got Harvey on this podcast week. We locked his Facebook out.
That's right. We tried to hack his Facebook, and then we sent him some blackmail. Just said, if you come on the podcast, we'll give you your password back.
Strangely enough, I actually had somebody try to hack me while I was at Bugs Island on day one. And, you know, for me, I have to be on top of everything that happens with my social media. So I immediately called my wife. I'm like, hey, if you've got time, can you get on this? And she's like, I don't have time. So I literally reset my password, did all of that. And then 2 days later, it sent me another thing saying that I have to have 2-stage sign-in,
two-factor
verification. And I'm literally trying to start that all up, and it locks me out, and I'm done for like 5 days. So it can be a real pain in the rear end, but you know, I learned long ago through others that have come before me that it's really important to answer all your social media questions, all your messages, because you never know, the next Brandon Polnick may be the kid that you're helping out right now.
Yep.
And you know, I learned that from following Ike and Ellie like I do. Years ago, when I first started getting into this, my wife had like an hour-long conversation with Ike, just back and forth on Facebook or Instagram or something. And when you can reach out to guys like that and have him answer, now he may not now, but this was, you know, when social media was still pretty new, maybe not new to everybody, but new to me. To have somebody like him step up and say, hey, I'm going to answer your questions and see if I can help you out. That was a huge influence on how I do my stuff.
Yeah. Like, you know, he was one of those guys that kind of trailblazed the use of social media to grow his brand. And, you know, we're seeing folks coming up now that are finding ways to leverage the new algorithms and the way new things work and you know, work it to their advantage. So like you were saying, you got to stay on top of it. You got to respond to those messages and make sure that you engage with your followers, or else they're going to move on to the next person and try to get the answers they're looking for from them. I think that was good. A lot of good information there, but at the end of the day, just be a good person and you know, don't be afraid to help another angler. We say it all the time. Like, and I don't know, Harvey, I know you've listened to our stuff. You probably heard us say it, but everybody talks about growing fishing and growing the industry till it's time to actually do it. And then they don't want to say anything. So, you know, I've started saying something new on all of our posts. Trey said, you know, we want to help grow the industry one cast at a time. But I say, I want to build a community of anglers helping anglers one cast at a time, because at the end of the day, we're our best resources, being able to reach out to anybody who has experience at any level. You know, it's important to be open and to help each other. I mean, like I said, I might not send you waypoints on a lake if I know I'm going to fish against you in a tournament, but I got no problem telling you what I'm looking for, you know, or where they've been. And that's the only way that we're continue to get better. And like you said, Ike was one of the best. I don't know. I had some conversations with him when he was sort of coming up too, because he was sort of local for me growing up in Pennsylvania. He was on the other side of the state, but kind of seeing somebody from our area get to that level. And he was really one of the first from our sort of immediate area to make it to that level. He was always open, when social media came around. So I remember talking to him when I was young on social media and getting back to him. Ishman Rose, another guy who's really good face to face. If you meet him, he's a good salesman. He's good to talk to. He's a little bit blunt. I love Ish, but he can come across as a little bit blunt. But he's another one. I remember when the Classic was in Pittsburgh, he didn't make the last day cut, and I was probably, 10 or 11, and he talked to me like I was fishing the elites right alongside of him at 11 years old for probably an hour and a half, just answering every question an 11-year-old would have about bass fishing like it was nothing. And ever since then, I've been a fan of him. We've seen Harvey at shows, even visiting booths. He's not associated with or anything. If people start asking questions, he jumps right in and helps those folks. So that's good advice for anybody that's listening. And, we talk about ways to help, grow your presence in the industry or social media, and just being helpful to other folks is a great way to bring exposure to yourself, and in turn exposure to any companies that you are working with or may work with. I know we were going to talk rods, and we'll get to that, but you also said you want to talk a little bit about those partnership opportunities that come when you least expect them. So I think this might be a good time to kind of segue into that.
Yep.
Yeah, most definitely. I was literally at the Bentonville Bike Fest on Sunday. Was walking around, had this hat on, and I'm just enjoying being there. It's cool watching all these kids, and when I say kids, there's like some 10 and 12-year-olds out there doing these big dirt jumps and backflips and loop-de-loos and everything else. And they had some other trials that they were doing where they would jump from logs to rocks and all this stuff on bicycles. Really cool stuff to watch. But as I'm walking through, checking out all the vendors that are there, I literally have a guy that stops me, and he was like, "What are you from North Carolina?" And I'm like, No. Well, what do you do? I said, I fish professionally all over the country, or semi-professionally, however you want to say it.
We can talk about that later.
You're professional.
You're a professional.
You're a professional.
Yeah. So anyway, he's like, I literally drive by Cash and Rods twice a day. I'm like, cool. That's pretty awesome to see somebody that's driven all the way from North Carolina to here to set up a booth to sell hats, right? And he's got the cool, really cool hats with the leather logos on them. And we get to talking, and he's like, "Hey, I want to help you out." And I was like, "Man, I really and truly appreciate that, because it's not often that something just presents itself like that." And, got his business card. We talked for a few minutes, and he's like, "Here, take one of these as a sample. That way you'll know what it is." My wife ended up buying another one from him while we were there. And just meeting people like that in random places, you never know who you're going to talk to.
That's right.
That could be the CEO of a company that 3 years from now you may be partnered with or trying to partner with. So for anglers, and especially these young anglers, always be very aware of the things you're saying, where you're saying them, and how you present yourself on social media. One of the best pieces of advice that I had that came from a company that I never ended up working with was, even if something, you buy a certain product and doesn't work the way you thought it would, or it's not up to the quality you expected, don't ever get on social media and bash it, because you may be trying to work with that company in the future. And I've seen this over and over, especially on TikTok, where these young guys, they'll break a bait out of the package. "Man, I'm taking these factory hooks off because they're junk." And I'm like, dude.
Yep, there goes your opportunity to ever work with that company.
You probably just burned a bridge that could cost you working with not only one, but maybe 5 or 6 different companies. because
Yep.
the word you just said.
Yeah.
So you always have to be aware of the situation that you're in and who you could be working with in the future.
Yeah, and we don't wear uniforms in the fishing. Like there is no uniform in the fishing world. Go to iCast and look at the folks that are walking around and who you would never know who's who. Look at the VP of like Tackle Warehouse, for example. If you ever meet him, he's usually in flip flops, a pair of shorts, and a golf shirt. You would never think he was in the position that he's in.
Yeah, the owner.
And you could rap to him about how terrible you think their shipping is, or and you go off on the mouth because you had an issue with them, and then next thing you know, you're looking for partnerships. And I remember meeting you one time. Yeah, you might want to go check with somebody else.
I think iCast was a great opportunity for us to, well, especially myself, to get an inside look at how complex the industry really is. Like a lot of people, from the outside looking in, they think like, oh, that bait company makes every hook that goes on that bait. They paint all those baits. They make the plastic, they make the packaging. No, dude, that's all like subcontracted out to different companies. If you think everybody pours their soft plastics, you're very, very wrong. So when you get that X bait out of the package and say, this is garbage, and ripping it in half, well, the person that poured that bait is probably looking at it too and saying, I don't ever want to do business with that person either. So perception is reality, especially on social media. And you can judge somebody very quickly on their social media page. And I know that I've seen several side-by-side bait videos where they cut baits in half and they're like, this is a garbage bait and whatever. Dude, well, good luck in the future. You know what I mean? So that's a really, really good point.
You mean like when Ben melted down that jackhammer to show that they weren't tungsten?
About anything.
I didn't say anything about the quality.
No, you were just proving it wasn't tungsten.
It was, the jackhammer's tungsten. I mean, it's not, but unless you buy the JDM version. But being in the industry, you see people trash different companies and all. I sit back and chuckle because I know their products are made in the exact same place, just different names on them.
Yeah. There's a lot of those. There's only so many places that pour baits. There's only so many hook manufacturers in the world. There's only so many factories that make the wire and do everything. So it's all pretty well intertwined.
So would you submit, Harvey, that, especially for young aspiring anglers or those already in the industry, is it a constant state of job interviews?
Yes.
Like your life is a constant state of job interviews.
100%.
Yeah.
And you never know when you're going to have an opportunity to help a company that you may never work with. Mm-hmm. We've been around for as long as we have now. I've brought certain things to certain companies that I'll probably never work with, and it's not on the production side, it's on the quality side more of, hey man, why don't you try this? This could help you catch more fish, one, which is the way I look at things. And if you're catching more fish, word of mouth is going to produce more sales. So I've never looked at it as okay, I'm going to go to this company and tell them and give them this big sales pitch. I just look at something and see where I think it could be better. And sometimes I'm right, sometimes I'm probably not, but it's just my opinion. That's all it is. And I've had ideas that Express took and ran with and made their boat a better company. Dale Hightower, Bill Lowen, Caleb Summerall, Jason Christie, we all had input into helping them build a better boat. And, I can go to the shows now and walk up to their boats and see things that I talked about or Jason talked about or Dale talked about or Bill talked about and made them have a better brand. Mm-hmm. And being part of that communication was huge for all of us. And, in smaller companies, hey man, if you'll try this instead of that may help you catch more fish on that particular bait. It may work out, it may not, but it's those little ideas that we try to be helpful. it doesn't matter if I'm at the local tackle shop and somebody walks up and says, man, I'm going, I was there just a couple weeks ago and I had a guy come in that was going saltwater fishing. Man, I'm looking for this, this, and this, and this. And he comes out with like some freaking 10-aught hooks. And I'm like, bro, wait a minute. You're either going to El Salto or somewhere like that. And he's like, no, I'm going offshore fishing. Okay, well, this will work. But that one, yeah, that ain't going to work. And just helping that guy made me feel good inside because I know that the stuff that I told him is going to be close to right. Even though saltwater fishing is not something I do every day, I've done it enough when I was younger that I know enough about it to be able to say, this will work and that won't.
Mm-hmm.
But we all have those things that we're all highly opinionated, obviously, and being able to be helpful to the younger anglers and even some of the anglers that are just new to the sport is always going to be a great opportunity for all of us, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. And you hit the nail on the head. Everybody has an opinion. And that's probably the question I hate the most when you see it pop up on a fishing page or something is what rod's best for this money? And it's like, well, here we go. And then next thing you know, guys are wanting to kick each other down the stairs and punch a baby because he thinks lose is better than straight king or catching's better than, whatever. And it's I just sit back and laugh and I'm like, man, the guy just asked a simple question. We all have opinions. Like there's nothing to get mad about. Your opinion doesn't invalidate mine.
The funniest one to me are the knot videos. People get panties in the wad over knots.
Oh yeah.
And which knots to use and what type of line and all this other stuff. And like we've probably all caught big fish in every type of knot out there at some point in our life. Like they all work, right? Some may have better applications than others, but don't call people idiots if they're doing something. Like there may be a knot that's better for a particular technique, and you can point them in that direction. But they tie a granny knot, it may break more often, but they can still catch fish with it. So
true.
Yeah,
people,
I've actually seen a few knots that I'm actually, it's so hard for all of us to break out of that. I've used this my whole life. It works every time. Or I'm not going to try anything new. I've looked at this tornado knot over and over again, and I'm like, that's really similar to what I'm already tying, but it's got a lot more steps. And for me, the faster I can get my bait tied on, get it back in the water, all that extra loops and back flips and everything else that you got to do with your line. If it costs me 3 seconds, that's a cast.
Yeah.
So all that time I'm spent doing all this extra stuff, if I could be casting, I'm going to tie a different knot to where I'm faster getting back up there and casting again. Denny Broward many years ago at the Classic in Shreveport, the line for Kevin Van Dam's all the way wrapped around the building. And Denny's sitting over here by himself. And I walked up and I was like, Denny, what knot do you use? He's like, a double polymer knot. Okay. Thank you. And I walked on. And he was like, hey, wait a minute. Why ain't you in line to see Kevin? And I'm like, hey, I'll see him. I got the information I came for already. You're like number 6 or 7 on the money winning list. You fish baits that you have to have high impact to get the fish out of where they're at and into the boat. I would rather use that knot 100% of the time over anything Kevin's using because he's most of the time cranking.
Yeah,
I've literally seen him flip like one tournament. So I'm going to go with a guy that's got the monster hook set and catches fish out of the junk because that's what I like to do. I'm not a crankbait guy. I will throw one, but it's not my forte, so to speak.
Just one. You only own one.
Yeah, he just has one crankbait.
No, I probably got as many crankbait rods as anybody that works with caching.
Yeah.
That's a fact. Because I when I do crank, I use so many different crankbaits.
Yep.
From a square bill all the way to the big, I've got some of the old man stretch 30 pluses.
Oh,
I've got some.
You gotta have a freaking broomstick to throw that thing, and it will absolutely kill you by the end of the day.
Yeah.
But there are times at Grand that if you're not throwing something like that or the XD10, you're just not fishing for the right fish.
Yeah.
So that's that's one of those things where I've got them all. That's not something I talk about a lot because it's not something I do every day.
Yeah.
I go
I'm the
flipping a
same.
jig. Yeah. I'll probably at some point during the day, I'll find something that I need to flip a jig into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if I'm fishing offshore and I see a lay down on the bank, well, I'm going to go flip that lay down before I leave here.
Yep. I'm a lot like you. If you look at my boat in the summer when those fish start offshore, I'll carry, I have a relationship with Cashin, so I got a bunch of them too. And I'll have 6 or 7 different crankbait rods and then always have like 6 different worm jig rods because those are like you said, with crankbaits, there's such a wide variety of sizes and shapes and weights that'll get the same job done. And you're trying to figure out which one, and people look at you like you're crazy. And I throw everything on a medium heavy fast. And it's like, well, you're only hurting yourself. And I was that guy for a long time until I got down here and I wasn't just fishing the river and chasing smallmouth and started fishing different types of water and branching out on different techniques I was using and stuff. And as I started going to Cashin and talking to the folks that understood that, like the science behind it, it all started to make sense. And this is we just keep segueing perfectly. I don't know if Harvey's doing this on purpose
It's
or if
because
it's just flowing.
No, we like his Facebook.
But that was the questions we all get. I'm sure every single one of us here has gotten it, if not once, 100 times. What rod do you use for this? And I know that's something that you wanted to talk about when I asked you what you want to talk about when you came on, because you have your podcast and go on others. So why don't you give us your take on, kind of how you match a rod to a bait on what you're doing?
So for me personally, the weight of whatever I'm throwing is paramount to what rod I'm using. And if you'll look at, we're going to use Cashin, for example, just because it's a company both of us are familiar with. I'm sure the other 2 guys that are on with us have seen them a time or 2.
Oh, yeah.
So when I'm throwing, say, a Shad Rap, which is an extremely light bait, the SR5, which is a smaller size, you're going to need a rod that's going to be able to throw a lighter weight. And we're not talking the BFS stuff. We're talking, straight casting rod, medium speed reels, something that's going to get a bait far enough out that you're going to crank it down, get the maximum running depth out of that bait. So for me, I want a medium light cranking rod that's going to throw 1/4 ounce stuff when I'm throwing a Shad Rap. It's not the best option, but it is an option I like to use. And I'll get into what the best option is, and that's probably a spinning rod for those type baits. Spinning rods with very light crankbaits, great combination. But once you start graduating into, say a swing head or a hard head, whatever you want to call it, you go up, you're going to bump up to about a 3/8 ounce worm jig rod. Even some of the frog rods that are rated for lighter weight stuff, 3/8 to say 1.25 ounces. Worm jig rod that Cashin makes is the perfect setup, paired with a high speed reel, 18 to 20 pound line. Once you start getting into the heavier, your bigger jigs, throwing a big worm with a 1/2 ounce weight, then you want to step up a little bit. Worm jig rod will still work, but when you go to, say, a 7/6 heavy action, that's going to give you just a little bit more length and a little bit more power in the rod for those hook sets on long casts. Those are just a few examples. I mean, we could sit here and go all night on all the different stuff out there. But for me, pairing the rod to the weight of the bait is paramount on getting the best performance out of what you're throwing at that time. I know when I first went to New York, I actually called Bill Lowen and was like, hey, dude, what's the best option for rods? Because I've never dealt with big smallmouth in that kind of current. And Bill was like, hey, dude, get some medium heavy 7/6 spinning rods. And I'm like, whoa, medium heavy. That's awful stiff. And he's like, trust me when I tell you, the stiffer the rod, the less amount of fish you're going to lose. And he was exactly right. The longer, stiffer the rod is, the less fish I lost. And it's been an evolving thing over the last 4 years that I've been able to go up there, where I've learned a little bit more every trip. Now, unfortunately, I haven't done as good as I did that first trip, but it's something that you continually learn, and it's an evolving thing with each angler until you get to that point to where, okay, I'm going to pick up this 2-ounce punch weight and this freaking broomstick that I'm fixing to punch with. And that's one of those things we'll get into at some point on a later podcast or the bathtub.
Yeah, I think, and he brought up, I want to stick with the crankbaits. That's probably the number one question you get is about crankbaits and rods. And I know when I noticed, and I'll say any moving bait with a treble hook, when I noticed a much better hookup ratio, better landing ratio, was when I learned how important a moderate action and having that parabolic bend is with those treble hook baits and a crankbait, no matter how big. Even, I mean, if you look at the rod that John just released, the big bait rod, we were going to stick with Cashin. He designed that to throw those big giant XD crankbaits, where they like the not the 10s, but the whatever. The 8s. That's it. 6 and 8s. And so that's got that moderate action for the treble hook swim baits and things like that. So kind of explain why that's important to you, or why people should look to that moderate action when they're throwing a moving treble bait, especially.
I'm extremely old school when it comes to crankbaits, and I've had some of the best glass rods that were ever made at that time. But once you move over into the carbon family, you get a better reaction of the rod out of the carbon than you did the fiberglass, and you get way more feel as far as sensitivity. For me to have a good rod that's going to load up correctly, that's going to bend in the right way, when you're throwing, say, a square bill or a DT6 Spro rock crawler, something like that, it's very important for that rod to load up through the entire rod, especially when you get a big fish. When they suck that bait in, you want that fish to hold on to the bait long enough for you to pull, because you've only got to move that bait as long as from the point to the what's the word?
The barb.
The barb.
The bend,
yeah. That's how far that bait has to move in that fish's mouth. It's very little, but as that fish grabs onto that bait, they actually hold on to a bait a lot harder than we think. So pulling on that bait, even though you've got a rod that's going to bend correctly, you have to just continue to have that pressure. The way most fish get hooked, and I've seen this in some of the tanks, is as they start to open their mouth, that's when you get the bait to move. And having that rod already preloaded by reeling and just pulling on it instead of a hard yank and trying to set the hook, as soon as they start to open their mouth, that bait moves just the perfect amount to set the hook. You're going to land more fish that way. You're going to get many more opportunities because that rod's going to actually allow that fish to suck the bait in as it's moving away from it. And that's just a few things that I've learned through all my years of tournament fishing and fishing in general, that having a good rod, you don't have to go out and spend $1,000 on a rod. There's all kind of rod brands out there. Cashin has a really good price point rod right now that anybody can afford, and you're going to get a really high quality rod to do all those kind of things with.
Yeah, that's the Element series. For anybody listening, if you want to check them out, they just released that. It's a $129 price point. I think it's probably the best rod in that price point range, knowing the technology that's in there. We can talk about that another time, but
we just oh, go ahead, Ben.
I said, I don't want you guys to make fun of me anymore, because they, on the crankbait, I lean into it. And you guys, why aren't you setting the hook? Well, my large.
I don't make fun because I just wind into them.
Yeah,
I did used to. I mean, I know that's why I was missing fish, because I was, like I said, I was a medium heavy fast. That's all you need for everything. And so when those fish weren't loading up, like Harvey's saying, I was missing it. And you hear guys all the time when you fish with them, I don't understand how they hit that crankbait with them two treble hooks. You don't get a hook in them. Well, that's because you're reacting too quick when you have that that medium heavy rod, or you don't have the right rod, and you're basically pulling the bait away from them and they're not getting a chance to actually eat it. And then when I went to a moderate action, and I remember that first bite and feeling it and just winding, and the next thing you know, that fish is there, and I never even had to move the rod. And it was like a light bulb went off in my head. Like, man, you know how much more money I could have won local tournaments if I had done this because of fish I lost.
Pete and I were out the other day, and I said something to Pete because I use, I have a handful of casting rods, and I'm slowly divorcing my other inventory. Not that I didn't catch fish on them, because I totally did. And that's, listen, if you can't afford $129 rod, then go out and try to find what works for you. But what we're talking about here is kind of the science behind it. After I switched over and started using the Cash and Worm jig rod, I didn't switch any of my reels, by the way. Like, I still have relatively inexpensive reels. I found so much more sensitivity, increased retention and hookup ratios, and just the lack of wear and tear on your body by using something that is is lighter and more sensitive. It just helped me recover after, 8, 12, 15 hours on the water and stuff. And Pete and I were out fishing a school of them. And I think he caught his first Carolina rig fish that day.
It wasn't my first one.
This is his first one. Don't let him lie. But no, it was great. But we were catching fish, and they were all on, the rods we're talking about right now. And so it is important if you care. But if you don't care and you can't afford, then, fish what you want to fish. But it's definitely made a huge difference for me.
And there's rods, and I don't want to keep, like this being a caching commercial, but they do make multi-purpose rods and things like that they built that action to be able to handle moving baits and a worm jig and things like that. And if you ever go to a show and they're there and Matt's there, just ask Matt questions and he'll science you to death about things. But if you listen to him, everything he talks about, it'll start to make sense on why, I was of the kind, I'm sure Harvey back in the day, Ben, I'm sure all of us, when we were watching bass growing up and everything, and guys were talking about rods, we're like, they're just trying to sell that rod.
Quantum.
You gotta have, and it's got to be this action when I do this and this action when I do that. And until you start to kind of look at the science behind it, and if you start to take it more seriously, like we're saying, you don't have to go out and buy a $200 rod or $129 rod. Fish with what you're happy with. But when you start to understand, you start to catch more fish.
Oh yeah.
You see a lot of people comment like, I don't understand why someone would pay this much for a rod and reel. And it's true. Like, anything will catch a fish, right? A broomstick or a cane pole can catch a fish. But I've explained to a few people, and it made sense to them. Like, you can go down to Walmart and buy, Savage, a $200 deer rifle, and you can kill a deer, but there is an accuracy, range, quality issue compared to like a Remington 700 or a Browning or something, right? There is something you get your pay for, and when things are designed for a specific purpose, you're just going to have more. You're going to be more efficient and ultimately have more success over the long term with it.
Yep.
I always tell people, like, you can vacuum your living room with a shop vac, but it's a lot nicer to do with a Dyson.
No doubt. One of the say the grandfather of crankbaiting, Rick Klein. I don't know if he still does it, but at one time, every rod that he used for every different application was identical. I don't know if he's still doing this, but 6-7 years ago, he took I'm going to do away with all my crankbait rods. I'm going to do away with all my flipping rods. All I'm going to have is, a 7.4, 7.5, 7.6 heavy action, and I'm going to use those rods for everything that I do. What he did by doing that is every bait, every rod that he picked up, the rod and the reel was the same. So that part of the equation was taken out of what he did throughout the day. Now, when he did all that, I'm not going to say he had bad years, but he didn't do as well as he did in 2018 and 19, right? He won 2 tournaments in Florida. in the same general area. But that was his mentality of, okay, I'm going to control every aspect that I can. And this is something that me and Stephanie have just talked about recently is let's control.
Bless you.
Yeah, she's back here probably
You're good.
cayenne pepper or something. I don't know. But you have to be in control of every aspect of the game that you can control, and then plan for what you can't control.
Mhm.
Practice is the same way. If you're going to have a north wind during practice and a south wind during the tournament, practice for the south wind instead of the north wind that you have during that tournament. But that was something that I felt was really unique that he did at that time. Like I said, I don't know if he still does it, but that was something that was really unique.
You can do that if you're a guy like Harvey Horn or somebody who's probably been in the game for a long time and still see moderate success with it because you have so much experience. I couldn't do that. You know what I mean? Like,
I don't think I could. I really don't. Just for the simple fact that I know that, at some point during, just like I went out yesterday, at some point I was throwing a 3/8 ounce jig. At some point I was throwing a 1/2 ounce jig. And then by the end of the day, I'd picked up a 1 ounce jig. And, when you're throwing a 3/8, you need to probably using our multi-purpose rod. But when you pick up that 1 ounce jig, you need the worm jig rod or a flipping jig or a flipping rod. But that's just because of the way I like to fish. I'm going to try all the different options that I can, especially if I'm not getting bit. But that's just one of those things where I think it's really interesting on how all the bait companies will have so many different sizes of the same lure. Big Bite's got a 3-inch, a 4-inch, and a 5-inch fighting frog, some of the most popular baits that I use. Some days they want the 3, some days they want the 5, some days they want the 4. And it's being able to figure out what they want in each day that makes it a little bit of difference. And I'm sure that with the OneCast baits, there's probably different sizes there to fit different applications.
I know we're talking about rods, but you brought something I want to ask you, Harvey. So let's, you said about not getting bit. If you're in an area flipping shallow brush, etc., how often and when do you decide to either move that area or you're changing colors, changing weight sizes for the fall? Like, how do you go about trying to go through that, especially when you're not really catching anything to get clued in on what the bite might be?
So for me personally, I learned from probably one of the very best out there on how long to spend in an area before I crank up and go somewhere else. That's the first thing that goes through my rotation. If I pull up into an area, I give it about 15 minutes. If I don't see any shad popping on the surface, if I don't hear, say I'm on Wheeler, the last lake I fished. Say I don't hear any bluegill popping in the lily pads. I don't see any shad moving around. The wind's not quite right in the area that I'm in at the particular time. Usually 15 or 20 minutes. If I hadn't got a bite, I'm leaving and going somewhere else. Now, in saying that, the first thing I want to do in any given practice situation, and I'm just using that as an example, because the first day that I go practice is just like the first day somebody goes to a new body of water. And sometimes that's the way it is for me. I'm going to a completely new body of water that I've never seen before the first day of practice. The first thing I want to do is go to an area that I know has a lot of fish just to see what I can catch them on, whether it be a shaky head, a fighting frog, a spinner bait, whatever that bait may be. I want to figure that out before I start expanding my search. Wheeler was a perfect example. I think the first morning I spent the first probably 20 minutes, I caught my first fish on a spinnerbait. I'm like, okay, another shad spawn going on, spinnerbait ought to work. And day 2 of the tournament, the second largest bass that I weighed in, caught that on spinnerbait. But I don't spend a lot of time in what I call dead water if I can help it. That's one of the things that this Mega Live has started to change in the way I fish. If I pull up on a specific spot, say it's a brush pile, and I scan across that brush pile and I see fish there and I see that there's active fish in the area, it's making me spend more time than I normally would have casting to that brush pile by seeing those fish there. Mm-hmm. Before, I could see fish on my 360, but I couldn't tell if they were really active or they were just there. And, every now and then you could see them swim out of the brush pile on the 360, but now you can literally watch the fish swim from one side of the brush pile to the other. So I'm spending more time fishing for fish that I probably wouldn't catch anyway. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I have to learn. All right, if I'm here for 10 minutes, I don't get a bite, I need to be going somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a change for me too. When you start getting, because I like you, I've only had forward facing for not even 2 years now. And that was always my biggest fear. And why I didn't get it in the beginning was I was going to waste time. And that comes to fruition pretty quick where you end up wasting time. So what I did personally, and rotations have always been an issue in my tournament fishing, is I'll stick in an area even before Mega Live, because I either caught fish there in practice or I know that there's fish there because I've caught them there before. And next thing I know, I've wasted an hour and a half and I haven't got bit. So I started this year. Actually, it was just the last tournament I fished. I set an alarm on my phone now for every 20. I think I had it 20 minutes. And if that goes off, and I'm not much like you said, until I internalize that clock, when that goes off, if I'm not seeing what I need to do, I'm putting the motor down, I'm picking up, and I'm going somewhere else and trying to find what I'm looking for. But you dropped a nugget in there that was like a light bulb for me, because it's not something that I ever thought about. I don't know if it was for anybody else, but we get so used to fishing the conditions we're presented with. And I say all the time, like, I'll go out and practice and smash the fish and then go to a tournament and catch a little bag, or, they're just not there, because I'm fishing the conditions on the day when I catch the fish, and they might be completely different. So practicing for the conditions that are forecasted for that next, 2 days later, or even if it's a week, you can get a pretty good idea. Because I'm going to go out and pre-fish this weekend for a tournament next weekend. Like, now I know the wind's going to completely change. It's out of the northeast this week. Next week it's supposed to be out of southwest. I'm going to practice for that southwest wind now. And I might not catch as many fish this weekend, but I'll have a better idea what to do when I have the conditions that I'm faced with. And that, for anybody that's getting into tournament fishing or has been, and I hear it all the time at the ramp, and I'm sure you guys have too, like, I caught 30 pounds in practice and today I have 7. And you hear it on Jordan all the time, because 30 pounds happens, it can happen in a heartbeat.
That's me on Jordan. That's
exactly it, because I'm fishing the conditions on the day I'm practicing, and then you get it changed, high pressure, low pressure, bluebird, you get a storm front, whatever it is, water levels change, the temperature comes up 10 degrees. If you know that stuff's coming and you fish for those conditions, there's still going to be some fish in those areas, but you have a better idea of how to approach it. And that, to me, that was like a dang light bulb moment. So I appreciate you sharing that one.
Fish for the future.
Yeah. For tournaments, obviously. Yeah.
One of the other things I think a lot of us get caught up in, and I know I did for many years, is, oh man, I gotta go get these bites in practice. Well, I've seen this year, granted, I haven't had any high finishes, but I've weighed in limits of fish every day so far in all but one event. That I would have weighed in the limit of fish if I had paid attention and not had a brain fart. But not catching fish in practice is not a bad thing. And we've all gotten hung up on, man, I've got to get these bites to where I'll know where they're at. Well, now if we can pull up with side imaging and Mega Live and all this other, the 360, and we can see those fish there, why don't you have to catch them in practice?
Yep.
I mean, yeah, it's okay to pull up on a brush pile, catch 1 3-pounder out of it, unhook that fish, turn it loose, mark the brush pile, move on. But you don't have to sit there and catch 20 fish out of that brush pile, because all you're doing is educating those fish on what you're going to do on tournament day.
We had last year at the club tournament at Lake Watery. We had a guy in the club. It was a tough event. Shad spawn was going on, so once that's done, but he found some fish offshore in 20 foot, like the day before the tournament, and he caught like 5 or 6 fish out of there. And I asked him, like, why did you do that? Because he went back during the tournament and he didn't get a single bite there. He's like, I know, and I knew when I was doing it, I shouldn't do it, but it's just too much fun to catch them.
Oh yeah. And we all get caught up in that, in certain instances. The last tournament that I fished with my son, I have not been on Table Rock in probably 3 years. Pretty sure it's been 3 years since I've been up there. Went and fished cold, didn't have any idea. I knew there should be still some spawning fish. I knew the shad spawn deal should be going on. Had a fog delay that lasted to like 8:45. I literally crank up, run around behind the boat ramp. I'm 3/4 of a mile from takeoff. I lose the first 2 fish in 8 inches of water. Literally had the same big, gamakatsu flipping hook that I'd been using at Wheeler. And those fish, you just don't need that giant big flipping hook. So changed hooks, next bite I catch. And throughout the day, I had like 12 pounds, 7 ounces. Well, we measure and release our fish just like the kayak tournaments do. In my case, I brought my fish in to be verified because I had my son with me. But we wound up with 12 pounds, 7 ounces, and we won the tournament. Well, I'm talking to everybody. Oh, man, they bit yesterday. They was biting real good yesterday. Every one of them I live scope yesterday, they'd run down and eat the bait. I'm like, I just went fishing. Mm-hmm. I didn't pay any attention to what was going on yesterday. I went fishing for today, and that's how I won that tournament. Yeah. I didn't have any preconceived notions about how deep or what I was going to be doing. I went and fished the way I wanted to and caught enough fish to scrape out a win.
And that's the mental side we talk about with fishing is the more knowledge you gain and how the more we never know for sure how fish behave, but the more general knowledge on fish behavior you get, that's when you start going, well, it's this time of year and this is going on, so these fish are going to be there. And then they're not there, and some guy comes in and stomps you by 15 pounds because I caught them all in 8 inches of water. And you're like, what? They were in the offshore brush piles yesterday. Well,
they move.
Sometimes if you get out there and they're not there, like it's time to do something different. And I think that's something that everybody struggles with because, and I say it all the time, like they should be here. I don't know why they're not here. Or I see them, they're here. Why aren't they eating? Well, those fish aren't active. And that back to circling back to Harvey's point with forward facing, that's the hard thing now because now they're there. And the more experience you get, that's a 6-pounder in that brush pile. And outside of putting a hook in a bluegill's back and flipping it down there, that 6-pounder probably ain't going to eat anything. Yeah. And you end up wasting 30 minutes trying to catch that one fish, which in a bed fishing or sight tournament, you can get away with that, sight fishing tournament like that. But if you're using forward facing and you're 5, 6, 7 minutes and that fish hasn't reacted to anything you put in front of it, you need to get the heck out of there.
Yeah. I think the important message is you don't all have to practice the same, but I think the message that you brought up that's really important is fish for the future conditions. And I know we all struggle with it. We like to fish history, and listen, there's plenty of anglers that will go out and dominate on Tuesday nighters, Wednesday nighters. They will dominate 1 or 2 tournaments a year. They'll cherry pick, and they know like that's where they're good at. That's their strength. They're going to fish it. But when you're fishing at the national level like you are, or all the other anglers in the other circuits and stuff, or you're just recreationally fishing, but for somebody like you are fishing for the future. You can't sore lip everything that you have, and you have to pay attention to the weather and stuff, which brings me to a question. I know I've been called, people got on me about it before, but I don't listen to music when I fish. I don't have earbuds in. I don't really even like to talk a whole lot. I got a lot of flack about this many episodes ago about like the co-angler thing. And me, if I was in the EQ position, fishing to qualify or requalify for the elites, I wouldn't prefer to have a co-angler. This is just Trey's opinion. Everybody can beat me up, whatever. But when you are so in tune to the environment, when you're hyper focused on the sounds, the smells, everything around you, does it get distracting for you in the EQs with somebody in the back of the boat?
Well, I'll put it this way. And I've been a co-angler, so I understand their perspective, their point of view. I understand that they're out there trying to win money just like I am. When most of the time, 99% of the time, the only thing that will cause me problems with having a co-angler is if they're not prepared to leave in a timely fashion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I pull up on a spot, I make 5 casts. I'm like, bro, we're going. And I'm in the seat ready to be go in less than 10 seconds. I've timed it over and over again. Just because time is cast. And I'm not a fast fisherman, but from place A to place B, I want to get there as fast as I possibly can. You know, my boat will only do like 65 miles an hour with 2 people, but still, I want to be doing 65 miles an hour as fast as I can, come off pad as fast as I can. A lot of times, I'm sure y'all have seen Jacob Wheeler, you know, he'll be done, turn the motor off and standing on the front deck, putting the trolling motor down before the boat's completely off plane. I will do that if I think it's necessary. And co-anglers can be a hindrance. That's not a bad thing. It's just a fact. Mm-hmm. I have asked co-anglers in the past at Grand Lake in 2021, the fall tournament that we had there, that I had my second top 10 on Grand. Day 2, I had an older gentleman, and I told him, you know, straight up, I said, I'm going to be hitting probably 40 or 50 spots today. And he looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, I would appreciate it, even if I have to swap life jackets with you, that if you would leave your life jacket on. Because when I'm getting to the point where I've got 1 or 2 casts left, I'm going to turn around and say, hey, we're fixing to go. And I would appreciate it if you'll be ready to go when I'm ready to go. Yeah. And he was super cool about it. He was like, hey, no problem. I don't mind wearing my life jacket all day. Just let me know when you're going to make your, you know, you've got 2 casts left. Let me know. At noon, I didn't have a fish. And he was kind of like, we're still going to continue to do this all day. And I said, yes, sir, we're going to continue to do this until I don't have any time left. At 12:25, I had like 17 and a half pounds because it literally just happened in 2 spots within 20 minutes. And he looks at me and he was like, I have never in all my tournament years seen somebody do what you do. Well, I caught a 5-pounder, pulled my trolling motor, ran maybe a quarter of a mile, dropped the trolling motor in the water. My first cast was my second 5-pounder, and finished out a limit within 10 minutes with a crankbait.
Yeah.
And he was like, he was just dumbfounded. He was like, I've never seen anybody do something like that. But and I told him, I said, this is how it will go down. If it goes down, this is how it's going to happen. And co-anglers can be the perfect example. Bugs Island, day 1, catch the first fish. It's like 14 3/4. I throw it on the board. Everything's good. I open the live well, and my co-angler looks at me and he's like, you're not going to throw that short fish in the live well, are you? And I'm like, short fish? What do you mean? It's only 14 inches. Nope. Got to be 15 inches here. It kind of took me by surprise. Pulled my phone out, tried to pull up the email, couldn't get the email to pull up. And I'm like, man, I hate to throw this fish back, but he's telling me it's 15 inches, and I'm not going to put a short fish in my live well. So I toss it, and I toss 7 more through the day that were between 14 and a quarter and 14 and 7/8. I weigh in 3 fish for 6 pounds. Day 2, I catch 16 pounds. If I'd have weighed in 2 more fish on day 1, all I needed was 2 pounds, even. Top 10.
Oof.
So co-anglers it was my fault because I wasn't 1,000% sure, and I couldn't pull it up in the email. Should have screenshotted it, which I will be doing from here on out, where I will know 1,000% this is the link limit right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that one cost me a lot of money.
Yep.
It wasn't the co-angler's fault. It was my fault because I just, hey man, this dude fishes here all the time. He's got to be right.
Yeah.
You know, but it cost him, I don't know what he would have done on day 2, but he would have been sitting in the top 15.
Yeah. And I don't mean to revisit the co-angler thing for everyone, for co-anglers are bad. Everyone has their own way to practice. Everyone has their own way to fish tournaments. Everyone has their own standard operating procedures as it pertains to that stuff. But, pay attention to that. That's a message to those fishing out of the back of someone's boat, whether it's mine, Pete's, Harvey's, Ben's. Everybody has their flavor. And so just ask the question like, hey, how do you fish? Are you a fast fisherman? Do you fish slow? You fish deep? You fish shallow? Like, what do you need in order to streamline the process? Because there are several instances where it's like tackle boxes all over the back of the boat. You're ready. Hey, like I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's do this. And so it's important to understand that. That's why I asked you about like the music thing and like I don't listen to music. I'm just watching for birds. I'm watching the cloud cover. I'm watching the way the wind's blowing. Sometimes I just feel like I smell fish. I don't know what it is. I just feel like that. But there are things that can be very distracting because I don't know why, but I hyper focus on distractions, and distractions sometimes get in the way. But it's just something I wanted to ask you about. So I appreciate you answering that.
Yeah. As far as like music and sounds, when my son was little, I would take him and he would scream and yell every time fish were caught. So that part of it, I don't really think makes any difference.
Yeah.
I do run a hydro wave when I'm fishing tournament days. And everybody's like, oh man, does it work? Does it not work? I couldn't tell you because I don't use it during practice at all. I want to make as much artificial noise as possible during practice, because if I can catch fish with all that going on, with the Mega Live, with the 360, with my transducer or my trolling motor pinging away, if I can get by with making all that noise and still catch fish, when I come back and I'm running my hydro wave, I feel like I'm going to catch them even better.
Yeah.
And that's just something that I've experienced over the years. I turned it on for years during practice and got to the point to where, you know what, I need to just concentrate on what I can do to catch fish in practice and make it to where it's more normal for the fish during tournament days. And I don't use a hydro wave as a means of making the fish more active. I use it as something to mask the sounds that my boat's already making, whether it be my aerator pumps filling the live wells full of water, the graphs pinging away with my transducers. It's just one of those things that seems like it makes a little bit of difference to me throughout a tournament day, especially like on Wheeler where I'm fishing extremely high pressured fish. I went behind a lot of people and caught fish, and that seemed to be the difference.
It makes perfect sense because
Confidence.
I mean, especially with the prevalence of forward facing and stuff like that, like being able to watch how fish react when you pull up on brush piles and stuff. And sometimes you'll pull up and you drop that trolling motor and they're all above the brush pile or off to the side feeding. And next thing you know, they all suck into that brush pile and you don't know why. Well, it could be that transducer ping. That's probably what it is if they don't see the boat. So Chelsea, when you listen to this now, I have to buy a hydro wave, and that's why. So we gotta have it. So
you can't fit it.
No, I got plenty of room.
Pete's trolling motor is 492 pounds.
I've seen some of the craziest stuff over the last 2 years. I mean, I've got a couple of buddies that are running 3 different forward-facing sonar transducers. They'll be running a Humminbird, and then they'll have two Garmin's on one trolling motor, and I'm like, dude, how much more do you need to see?
Well, that's
I mean, really,
All of it.
I think Destin's running 3.
Mike
He's only running
is
2. Destin's running 2.
Yeah.
We all know Destin DeMarion and Mike
heard of him.
Corbishley with Lawrence. You've heard of him? Mike Corbishley with Lawrence. We had him on. He's running 3 on his boat, so he can do because they have the new the 180 live, and then he can run forward at the same time. And,
I can only afford half of one.
I can't remember which one of the Japanese anglers and the elites has like 6 of them jokers on his boat.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. I know how I fish, and I've been extremely thankful for the Humminbird guys ever since day one. I'm just amazed that I haven't broken a trolling motor shaft in my career. Knock on wood. It's just anything extra that I put down there, I feel like at some point I'm going to knock it off.
Yeah.
So I try to be as careful as I can and still do what I'm wanting to do. But I couldn't imagine having 3 transducers down there. I'd have a panic attack every time I saw a log in the water.
I will say, anybody that claims they broke a Mega 360 pole, you're lying, because I have watched what that thing can do on my boat, and I don't know how you could break that joker, because I've had that thing pointing back towards the motor on stumps and everything else, and I haven't broke it yet. So
that's
I ran an Ultrex. The previous year was the first year that it came out. They were having problems with the epoxy in the shafts.
Yeah.
And literally the first Ultrex that I got on my first tournament boat for the Elite Series, first event down in Florida, I pull up and I'm like, bro, I brought an extra Fortrex with me. And one of the Humminbird techs, Joby, he literally looks at me and says, I'll bet you $100 bill that you can't break that trolling motor shaft. And I'm like, bet. It's going to happen. And in the last 5 years of running Ultrexes, I've never broken one.
Yeah.
And I had to put them through everything you can imagine. So yeah, whatever they're using, they must have got some of that, stole some of Matt's juice or something.
That's what I'm saying.
To build those shafts with, because they're indestructible.
Yeah, I've run into a lot of stuff with my Ultrex, because when I'm fishing, I don't pay the most attention, and I haven't broke that shaft yet either. So,
it's important for everyone watching and listening, though. Like, every single one of us runs something different. We all fish differently. We all run different gear. We all have our own techniques. I think that was the one thing that I brought up previously is like, does it appear that everyone is trying to take a cookie cutter approach to what a professional bass angler is supposed to look like, act like, use, be like? And the answer is no, because it's already been debunked right now with guys like John Cox and with Keith Poche. Every single angler is different. So I think that's the beauty of doing what you're able to do is, you can do whatever you want to do. You want to have 15 forward-facing sonars, by all means, attach them to your power poles or Raptors, whatever, go for it. Or you can have none and do it that way too, and still be successful. So it just boils down to your skill and what you're comfortable with. That hydro wave is your confidence. It's confident for you, so, but it is interesting to see how, go ahead.
You made me think of this about attaching something to your power poles. Have you guys seen the crappy brakes?
Yeah. That's why I said that.
Yeah.
I started thinking, because if your forward-facing sonar is on your trolling motor, like sometimes that wind's the wrong direction, the way you need to be facing, and your boat turns. It'd be like, well, that could position your boat a little bit better in some instances. But I just the other day.
I'm ready to see hovercraft fishing tournaments. I want to see.
No, James Bond car.
Yeah. Anyways, we're getting off topic here, but yeah,
it could work.
It could. Like I said, and I've talked about with John Cruz at stuff, and I'm sure you've talked about other people. Like everybody, I think one of the negatives that comes out of bass fishing is everybody thinks you have to have that $100,000 glass boat, and you have to have all these electronics. You have to have all of this stuff to compete. Because I see it time and time again. You don't need that stuff. I mean, if you look at the last 2 classics have been won out of aluminum boats. Gussie won his first Elite Series event using 360 to catch fish off of deep boulder. He didn't have forward facing sonar, but he knew how to use what he had, and he capitalized with this. I was a way more successful fisherman tournament wise when I had a 14.5 foot tracker with a 9.9 on it than we ran about 4 miles an hour, because I just like fishing.
Two stroke.
And yeah, I did what I was comfortable doing. And Harvey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you will. You don't need all of that stuff. I mean, you ran that great express boat, which isn't $100,000 glass boat, and you had a lot of success in it. Obviously, a lot of other guys are. Keith Pochet's running, I mean, the Gator Trax is up there for an aluminum boat, but he's running an 18.5 foot boat, and he's competing at that high level. I'm hoping that the success of the not glass boats and the different brand boats and guys still fishing with not all the electronics, or even if they have them, not utilizing them by staring at a screen for 8 hours, will help people see that you don't need that to compete. I
think the industry does it. The world does this. We emphasize on the little tangible things as being the most important things. What you look like, what you dress like, all these things, what you use. What you should focus on is the character that you have in the game. You know, are you a professional? Are you a steward of the profession? Do you emulate an image that others would want to be like, especially the youth and stuff like that? Sure, there's going to be times for entertainment and stuff. We saw that on the classic stage. We saw that with Pochet, and some of that stuff makes for good media. But growing the industry and trying to make it as professional. And that's why the question is there. Like, are you professional? You know, how do you define a professional? Other than just getting paid for doing what you do, does your behavior factor into being a professional? And so emphasizing your character more than the kind of boat you use, the kind of sonar you use, I think is a more important message. But that, you know, again, that's just Trey's opinion.
I 100% agree with that. I actually have, I know you guys can't see it, but literally sitting right beside my driveway is the 17.5 foot Ranger Cherokee with a 50 horse 7 reef from 1998 that I started fishing out of when I moved to Arkansas. I fished Bull Shoals. I fished Table Rock, Grand Lake, Lake Eufaula, Oklahoma, the Arkansas River, down at Dardanelle. I've been all over the place in that little boat. I had a ball fishing out of it. Can get into places that even Pochet couldn't get into out of that thing. Now, I'm not going to run and jump anything out of it because I want to let him stay on. But I had opportunities in that little boat to go places and do things that I wouldn't take this 21-foot Skeeter in. Yeah. You know, they say no way, because I'm dragging it over rocks and, you know, across sandbars and everything else, gravel bars. And I've literally thought about taking that boat to Eufaula, because I know there's some holes over there that I can get in and get out of that nobody else can go to. So yeah, I'm still in love with the little boats. I've always been in love with aluminum boats, just because that's what I was brought up fishing in. Is it nice to have the amenities of a 21-foot Skeeter? Love it. 1,000%. But I still enjoy fishing out of that little boat. My sister bought a bigger boat this year, and that boat's going to turn into my son's tournament boat. If he decides to fish tournaments, he'll have a boat to go fish out of. But it's one of those things where we've been programmed to have, you know, you got to have the best of the best to be able to compete with the rest of these guys, and that's just not the case. Yeah. You know, going back to Rick Clun. Clun is one of the best of all time, and always will be. And you know, he's fished out of a nitro that's not a 21-foot boat for years. I don't know what boat he's in this year, but I know every year that I competed against him in the Opens and in the Elite Series, he was in a 20-footer. Yep. What he likes. He made adjustments to make that boat more creature friendly to him. You know, he literally puts one of the big bumpers under the seat, whereas he's riding, it gives him a more cushioned ride. I hope I can walk at his age, much less. Right.
I know that's right.
But yeah, guys, it's been, you know, this journey that I've been on for the last 20 years now has been amazing. I've met some of the most amazing people in this country and from other countries. Meeting some of the guys from South Africa that have followed me on social media, some of the folks from Mexico and Spain and all over the world, the Japanese people that are here, some of the most amazing people on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And to be a part of that conversation where, when you look across the board at industry wide, how we treat each other and how we treat people that are outside of our industry is always going to be paramount to me over what I worry about what somebody thinks of me.
Yeah.
And, just being able to hang out with you guys tonight, every time we see each other at a show, it always means something to me to know that I've got good friends like y'all out there that if I need some information, I can call and say, hey, bro, what's going on at Bull Shoals right now, or what's happening over there.
Don't ask me right now.
But if you'd have called me, I'd have come fishing.
We told him.
Pete told him.
Yeah, I know. I got stuck in the hayfield and I didn't know my schedule.
Well, if my son hadn't have put a 4-inch gash on his leg.
I was going to ask. I saw that on social. That was your son. It wasn't you, because I saw a picture of you on a bike, and the picture that I think your wife posted the picture. I said, I don't know if that was Harvey or his son, but somebody got some stitches. It looks like.
Well, we talked about it. I looked at it, and I'm like, man, I don't think they're going to put stitches in it. It was deep. It was long. But I felt like, okay, they're just going to close it up with butterflies and he'll be good to go.
Yep.
Well, we took the big bandage off of it today, and I looked at it again, and I was like, yeah, just go and take him up there and let them evaluate it. After 12 hours, they won't stitch it up. And, of course, the doctor was like, yeah, we would have probably put some stitches in that, but the butterflies look good. We're just going to put some new butterflies on it, clean it up. And he wasn't real happy about it getting cleaned up again.
I bet.
I've had a few stitches in my time and wasn't a fan, so I wasn't going to make him go through that or something that wasn't life-threatening,
Someday we'll have like a OneCast after hours, and I'll tell you about the time I got stitches with no numbing or anything because I wanted to impress the nurse.
Yeah, good luck.
It didn't work out for me like I thought it would.
I thought
I had like 8 stitches in the end of my finger right here. And I would have much rather them just put the stitches in with no painkiller, because the painkillers were
that hurts worse. Yeah,
the pain I went through.
Well, you certainly have. You've had a heck of a ride to this point, and it's still going. Fishing the EQs. I have no doubt that you'll be back up there again. We're coming up on almost 2 hours. We've been talking. This is gonna be a great episode. But, we're getting to the end. So first I want to give you an opportunity to plug, your socials, and then, any sponsors you want to shout out, make sure that you get an opportunity to bring attention to those that help you be able to do this for a living. For how long have you been fishing now professionally? It's been 15 years or so.
Oh, no, gosh, no. I fished the first opens that I fished was in 2017.
That's right.
Qualified for the Elite Series that year, didn't go. The split happened at 18. I was 13th in points, so I was in that conversation to be allotted a spot, requalify, however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
I got in trouble with Ronnie Moore when I said I didn't requalify in 2018, and he enlightened me that I was wrong really quick. But I qualified in 17, requalified in 18 because of the split, and fished 19, 20, and 21. It was an amazing run. I'm not upset because I'm not there. They made a business decision to cut the field, and of course, 3 years later, here it is back at 107 or whatever. And I'm like, guys, either do or don't, but don't do both. That's my only thing is, we're still fishing.
Yeah, it's something we've talked about. There's a little bit of inconsistency there with field size, and there's really nowhere in writing that it says what they're going to do. It just kind of happens. So,
yeah. But otherwise, I mean, I don't have a $90,000 bill hanging over my head before I make a cast either.
That's right.
That's a good part about it. Right now, my focus is on winning an open and going to the classic. The Elite Series would be great if I had companies to step in and make up that gap in there to help me out. I would still go. Otherwise, I'm not. But to me, grassroots is where it's always been more fun. I still fish some of my Bass Nation Club stuff. The opens are always great, or the EQs now, as they call them. But I think we got some interesting stuff coming next year, possibly. And I'm looking forward to seeing what direction Bass decides to go with some of the ideas that they're kicking around right now. I hope that they do go in a little bit different direction. They're going to add some tournaments and change up a few things, but it sounds pretty exciting from what I've heard. Now, whether it's rumor or fact, I'm not sure. But it's always great to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
As far as companies that we talked plenty about cash and rods tonight, so I hope Matt's thrilled with this podcast if he gets to watch it. Black Rifle Coffee has always been great to me. Of course, Spro, Kamagatsu, Sunline is paramount in my life. I don't have anything in my garage but Sunline. So, if you're out there and you're looking for a really good fluorocarbon or braid or monofilament, Sunline's the way to go, in my opinion. Big Bite Baits, of course, they're more of a family to me than anything. They've always been there and had my back. I got to call and order some stuff this week, as a matter of fact. But if y'all get a chance, try some of the Black Rifle coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker. Or let me rephrase. I wasn't a coffee drinker until I started hanging out with the guys from Black Rifle. They have changed my life. I mean, I was one of those guys. I only drank coffee a couple of times a year when it was really cold. I want to say that Santee Cooper was probably the first time I walked by their little tent, and they was like, "Dude, try some of this coffee." I'm like, "Man, I done had an energy drink this morning. I'm good. Well, just try it and see what you think." I'm not really a coffee guy. Of course, I'll try what you got, pour up a little bit of it, and I'm like, "Where's the cream and sugar?" "Oh, you don't need that." Huh? How does that work?
Yep.
Tried it, liked it, and brought some home to my wife. And of course, now she's more the coffee drinker than I am, so she drinks up all the coffee. That's what she handed me a while ago. Was one of the newest bags that we just got.
Oh yeah.
And too bad we don't have smell-o-vision, because that stuff is amazing. I go to bed and have the fan blowing across that all night, and I'd be happy. But it's been great talking to you guys, and look forward to seeing y'all at ICAST if y'all are going to be there.
We're not sure yet.
We're not sure. Well, who do I need to call to make sure?
Ben.
Yeah.
So we're not, well, we can talk a little bit offline. We're not going to go down there with the booth, but we're trying to get away down there with the OneCast.
Yeah, we may come down media, come down and see everybody and see what's what, I like it a little better that way.
I'm not contractually obligated to go, but it's just one of those things where I'm going to go see all my friends,
Yep.
Another place that I can go hang out with all my buddies and talk fishing. So heck with it. I'll go walk 9 miles a day just to
see
some folks and have fun.
Get the steps in,
Yeah.
So for anybody that's watching that's not following you on social, where can they find you on the various social medias?
Harvey Horn Fishing, pretty much on everything out there. There's some underscores and stuff, but you should be able to type in Harvey Horn Fishing on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. What else? I think I'm on Pinterest. I'm not sure. I don't know if my wife does that or not. Something like that. But we're out there. We're constantly doing stuff on Instagram and Facebook, and a little bit on TikTok. So
and if y'all haven't, nope, go ahead. Yeah, make sure you give him a follow. Also, make sure you head over to YouTube, follow the Bass Hub over there for their weekly podcast with Harvey and Stephanie, who have now both been on with us, and we've
That's
been
right.
on with them. Well, we've been on with Harvey, so we'll have to get another one scheduled to try to get on with you, both of you.
That's
Stephanie
right.
was down there for the NPFL event, and Ben was also absent for that one because he was, I think, cutting hay or something, right, Ben?
Yeah, up at the farm.
Yeah.
I can't even upload like a TikTok video up there. So
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's a perfect
My
place
kind
to
of
be.
place. Is there
That's
land
right.
beside it for sale or anything?
So yeah, make sure you follow. That's right. Make sure you follow Harvey Horn Fishing on all the socials. Make sure you're following the OneCast on all the socials, as well as OneCast Fishing, who helps us keep this going. If you get on, you'll see all the links to a bunch of great veteran companies that buddies of ours are involved with, or that we're directly involved with. Make sure you click on those and support those companies however you can. I'll throw them out there again. It's Heroes Harvest. Well, we do tournament trade does every year. FX3 Inc., who is basically a suicide prevention company that Mike John's a good friend of ours helps head, trying to make sure we keep veterans going. And then Special Operations Bass Anglers, they do some charity tournaments and things, some other events. So make sure you check them out. And Harvey, we appreciate you. We'll get you back on. I want to get you back on because I want you. I love your story. Getting traveling through fishing and all that. And I actually want to get you and your wife on because I know she's an integral part of all that.
Yep.
And we all know that she's the real brains behind the operation. So we'd love to have you guys come on, just talk about your journey, because it's something that I think a lot of folks would benefit from hearing and let you know that it's possible, no matter what walk of life you come from or what, where you are financially or whatever, it's possible through hard work. And if it's something that you really want to do and really care about. So that's all I got. You guys got anything you want to add at the end here?
Ben?
I'm good.
All right. Awesome.
All right, thank you, Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks,
make sure
guys.
you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Make sure you follow Harvey Horn Fishing, and make sure you follow the Bass Hub on YouTube.
All right.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.